All right, the recording has begun. Oh, I just ruined it. All right, everybody, welcome so much to our next Edendale Up Close concert. Thanks to Jackie for booking our artists always, and thanks to everyone for coming out. Tonight we are speaking with, I will pin him, William Roper, Los Angeles, composer, multi-instrumentalist, interesting guy. So we have some cool videos of his performances and compositions to take a look at. And first, I'd just like to say thanks for joining us and tell us a little about yourself, how you got started, what you're doing these days.
Okay, well, thank you for having me. And thank you, Jackie, for being my big booster and getting me on here. Yeah, so how I got started. I'm an LA native. I started in the public schools music system, which are not like they used to be, those public schools. I started in elementary school on flute. That didn't work for me. Then I switched to trumpet. That also didn't work for me. In junior high school, I was sort of coerced and bribed into playing the tuba, and that worked for me. So I played tuba for a long time. I still do, so it's a very long time because I'm kind of old now. And as far as composing, that kind of started in the 80s, mid 80s, when I came back to town. And I had a girlfriend who had a friend who was a choreographer, and she liked the idea of a tuba. So she asked if I'd like to do a piece with dancer and tuba. And I said yes, because why not, right? And but it was a piece where I was on stage with her and I had to move with her. I didn't have to, but we decided to do that. And that's kind of how I got started composing in terms of a piece. A little more detailed, you know, tuba is a young instrument, so you have to, if you're gonna play solo music, you're either gonna have to play music not written for your instrument, or all the music written for tuba is new stuff, and a lot of that stuff requires you to improvise in it. But I always felt back then, and I really feel now, that improvisation was really token. It was tokenism, because they tell you to improvise for 15 seconds or 20 seconds, you know, and what good is that? What does that mean, you know? So, but if you improvise, you start, you know, composing. That's real-time composing. So that's how I got started. And that's what I've been doing since the mid 80s, is playing tuba. My life is, you know, I play classical tuba, I play contemporary music, I play in jazz ensembles, I play in free improv ensembles. I do commercial music, you know, which is really where that's the only place where there's any real money for musicians, is commercial music, you know. I mean, real money. So I don't do a lot of that. So I don't have real money, have an old car. But that's what I do now. And it's a hodgepodge of all those different things. And with COVID, it's much less of a hodgepodge. So there we are. That is the story as we stand or sit now.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, I can tell that you're very connected to Los Angeles from reading your website and looking at some of your pieces, a lot of which are site specific, I noticed, and performed in a particular place at a particular time. I read somewhere on your site that you think of yourself as a kind of, your pieces as kind of mapping a landscape in a way.
Yeah, they do. Let's see, there's a few things to say about that. You can't help but be influenced by where you are, you know? And for me, composing is not an easy thing. I don't walk around with tunes in my head. So I need something to spur me on, and places and people in them spur me, you know, they spur me. And mapping is a interesting kind of thing. You know, I read a book called Cartography. I don't know the author right now. Maybe I'll look when one of the things is playing. But, you know, she pointed out that even geography and mapping, it's not real because the pole moves. You know, the North Pole is never at the same place. It always moves. And that's our reference, the North Pole. So if it's moving, you may not be where you think you are because things have moved since you showed up, right? So that's kind of intriguing to me. And, you know, life is as real as it is, it's really kind of unreal. And I like that about music or certain kinds of music because, I don't know, this may not be making a lot of sense to people, but you know, a B flat is not always a B flat. Or it's a B flat, but it's a different kind of B flat than the person next to you. And if you're playing a certain kind of music, you'll get in trouble for not matching that B flat, right? But other kinds of music, you can play those other gray areas of B flat and be okay, you know? And I will say, since I play the tuba and I'm a bass instrument, we can determine which B flat is the right B flat, you know? What was that?
Oh, sorry. Somebody, if everyone maybe start off muting yourself, and then we will put it. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to put them in the chat, and then we can figure out who you are and unmute you, and we can talk. Yes, and I noticed that that's interesting about cartography. It's kind of an avant-garde view of cartography I've never heard before, but it makes sense. And a lot of your music that you play is kind of, I don't know if it's microtonal, but it's definitely not all traditionally toned. Right?
Yeah.
And
well, I'm not part of the microtonal movement, but I, you know, like I say, tones aren't definite, you know, other than, you know, when they started doing that half step system, but why not play in between the half steps? You know, why not? Not all the time, you know, it's not appropriate for everything, but it's cool. And I should say about the site-specific stuff, I do a lot of collaboration with dance companies, and one of the ones I've worked with forever now is Heidi Duckler's Dance Theater, and her stuff is totally site-specific. So I get into sites that way too, and sometimes they are the sites I want to be at, you know. And if they're not, I have to get with it. You know, as musicians, we have to get with it. We're not always playing where and what we want, but we're there and we have a job to do. So we have to get with it, you know. So, yeah, there we are.
another thing that you're known for is your large collection of unusual instruments from around the world. And William recently made a really cool video about that. And let's show that so we can hear some music and check out his cool collection of unusual lip reed instruments. Let's see. Here goes.
This is a very short video to show you some of the ethnic and primitive instruments that I employ in my practice. It also gives you an idea of what types of performance situations I use them in. Don't get too excited because mostly you are not going to hear these instruments, other than faintly in the background. These are all wind instruments, mostly lip reed instruments, which makes them brass instruments. Brass instruments are defined by the method of sound production, not by the materials they are made of. As implied, with brass instruments, your lips act as the reed. These instruments are from all over the world. Some I find as finished instruments. A lot of them I fashion myself. Very rarely I have an instrument made, as in the case of the cornu and the clarin de Cajamarca. Not all my attempts at making an instrument out of a shell or horn are successful, but sometimes I can make the mistakes work. That was the case with the Jumbox clarinet, the instrument in the clip that opened this video. Occasionally people ask why I do it. I've been playing the tuba since I was 13. I played the trumpet before that, and the flute before the trumpet. Playing the tuba can get old, even if you like doing it. These instruments bring a different energy and color to many of the situations I work in. They are less refined and more elemental. They seem to help people appreciate sound for the sake of sound. Sound came first. Music came second.
So cool. I love it. Can I ask, what's that thing at the end you're playing? It looks like wooden pipes all in a row and they're all in a rack kind of. Do you remember that?
One at the end?
Well, it's like almost to the end. It looks like a giant pan pipe kind of like wooden looking.
Oh yeah, that's a can. It's called a can, Khaen. It's from Southeast Asia. It's like Cambodia, Thailand, Northern Vietnam. And it's a mouth organ with mini pipes. And yeah, it's a folk instrument. They play it really fast, really very rhythmic. It's really quite an exciting instrument. Yeah, a can, they call it. Yeah.
When you get an instrument like that, do you try to learn how to play it traditionally, or do you just adapt it to your style?
I adapt it to myself because it's too complicated for me. Too many fingers, you know. Tubas, we don't have to use all our fingers, you know. I played the bassoon for a little bit in junior high school, and it was just too many fingers for me to mess with, you know. So
that scene of you playing the conch shell reminded me of a story I was reading about you earlier today, and then I got interrupted, so I didn't even get to the end of the story. You can tell me the end of the story, where Esa-Pekka Salonen is putting together a group to play some kind of traditional Mexican folk music. This is a long time ago. I was reading about it in the LA Weekly, and somehow you wind up in his office like that same day, and he's like, "Can you play a shell?" And he's like, and you're like, "Sure." And you grab a shell, start playing it, and then that's as far as I got. And then tell me if that's all true or what.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's true, but not the way you said it.
Okay.
The deal is that I played a concert for a friend, a violist, and it required a lot of gongs. And I have a collection of gongs because I have an illness, right, of collecting stuff. Collectors know it's an illness, right? So, and I had a Volkswagen back then. I'll shorten this story. I know it sounds very long. I had a Volkswagen Beetle. So I got all the stuff there in the Beetle, but as often when you pack, when it was time to leave, I couldn't get everything back in, right? So the principal percussionist of the LA Phil at the time happens to live near me, and he happened to be playing that concert. So he was able to take this big gong and this big rack back to his house, right? So, and then I never picked it up. And he called and said, "Are you ever going to pick this thing up?" And I said, "Actually, you can have it if you want it because it's been so long." And he basically said, "I don't need your gong. Come pick it up." So I went to pick it up. I knocked on the door. He opened the door and he started looking at me very strangely, very funny. And he said, "Roper, do you play the conch shell?" And I'm standing there thinking, no, I don't play the conch. but this is the principal percussion of the LA Philharmonic asking me if I play the conch. I'm thinking, how hard can it be? So I say to him, yes, I play the conch. So they were doing Night of the Mayas by Sylvester Revueltas, who is a Mexican composer, or was, he's dead now. A lot of alcohol he drank. And it has a big solo conch part in it. So he said, we're doing Night of the Mayas. If you want to play the part's yours. So I said, of course, I'll play the part. And so I walked in and we worked it out. And the score actually says, if you don't have a conch player, have a euphonium play a high E. Maybe it's an E flat. And I said to him, do I have to play that note on the conch? He said, I don't know, we'll ask Essa, but Essa was out of town. So anyway, I had to go on this search for conches. And maybe that's how this thing started with all these instruments. I had to go on the search for conches, and I got 3 or 4. And so I did the piece, and it didn't matter what note I played. It just needed to be loud and on time. And the rest is history, you know?
That's great. I love it.
So that's what happened. Yeah. I lied, but we do that in Hollywood, you know?
Oh, yeah. I mean, if someone asked me and it seemed like there was some money involved, I'd be like, yeah, I guess I could play that.
I do that. How long do I have? You know?
And I'm sure having heard you play the conch shell on that video, it's pretty good. So I noticed that on your discography, a lot of your recent pieces are for strings.
Yes.
And we have a string piece with a really cool accompanying video we're going to play. Maybe we'll watch it and then you can tell us a little bit more about it.
Okay.
Let's take a look. Is this one? It's called Bridge to the Four Islands. That was very cool. Thank you. So they just recorded that this past year.
Yeah, that project was sort of a result of COVID. You know, I think Human Resources made space available. They had to compete to get the space. It was a open call. I say they, the Southland Ensemble and a subgroup for that, from that ensemble, competed to get the space, and they put together a series of videos of music making. But as you can see on there, they're really video pieces, you know, more than music pieces. And it's important to say that all I had to do with that, there's three of those that you're going to see tonight. All I had to do with it was write the music. The whole visual thing for each of the three pieces, I had nothing to do with. I didn't know what they were going to do in advance. I just knew that they were going to do my pieces. And so if you're seeing this for the first time, however you felt about it, I might have been close because I had no idea, you know. And I was struck by the beauty of the visual of that. It's called The Bridge to the Four Islands, and I changed my background. That's the monument in Japan that is titled The Bridge to the Four Islands, because they, you know, Japan, they have like many countries, a checkered history of territory and what belongs to who and all that. So there are four islands off that part of Japan that after World War II, the world gave those islands to the Russians, and the Japanese want them back. And you can see the islands from that cape. So yeah, so that's the story. Yeah, I think Southland Ensemble did a really genius job in all the pieces of mine that they did. Yeah.
In your score that you gave them, did you have anything like that leaf noise, or did they just add that?
She did that. She had a lot of leaves. Now, I could be wrong. I haven't talked to her about it, but she does the thing with her foot swirling around. Now, in my scores, when I want people to improvise, to do a free improvisation, my symbol, my score symbol, you can see them there, those loops there in like the 1, 2, 3, 4, the fifth staff. You'll see those loops. I suspect that's what she was doing, you know? And Actually, when I first watched it, I was mesmerized, and I watched it a few times. Then I said, I'm going to go look at the score and watch the score while she plays it. Because I don't know about other composers. Me, I kind of forget what I write. Once it's written, I've kind of forgotten it. And especially, I'm like a lot of composers, and not like a lot of other composers, but the kind of composer I am is, it's kind of rare and a privilege to have the music played. So much of it doesn't get played, or it's played from such a long period from when I wrote it that I've kind of forgotten, what I wrote. And I have to say that she is pretty, how do you say? She sticks to the score, But anyway, yeah, the leaf noise, she had a lot of leaves at home, she told me. So she put them all in bags, and I think they were maybe her neighbor's leaves, and took them down to human resources and put them on the floor and did that. It's really genius, I think,
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
You have a subtitle. Is it in Japanese?
Yes, it is. And I used to be able to read that.
Oh, it's probably just Bridge to the Four Islands in Japanese.
Yeah, I think it is. Why wouldn't it be? Yes. Yeah.
So you must have traveled all around Japan if you went to like the north of Honshu like that, or Hokkaido.
Yeah, Hokkaido. Yeah, I got a fellowship in 2013 to spend 3 months in Japan to do a project to set some poems by a Japanese poet that I know who used to live here, to set some poems to music. So that was my project. But the thing was, when I got there, they let it be known to me that I didn't have to do that project, that my real job was just to interact with the Japanese people. So I spent a lot less time on that project. In fact, on that project, what we did was have lunch a couple times, For the rest of those 3 months, well, I was based in Tokyo, Sapporo, and Kyoto. But I just spent the time traveling around, since I didn't have to, sit in in Sapporo for, 3 months and put poetry to music. I have to say, I kind of hate composing. It's really a chore. So I traveled around. So I ended up going to 17 cities, and I took the Hokkaido train tour, which, it's 7 days. So I just rode the train for 7 days and carried a suitcase and would, get off at a station, go to the hotel across the street from the station, hang out for a day or an evening, and jump back on the train. So, but in Nemaru, where this monument is, I spent a little more time. I think I spent two days, because it's a far point in Japan. So I went to the three of the four farthest points you can get, compass points: farthest north, farthest west, farthest south. The farthest east I couldn't get to, because that's in Okinawa, and it's on a little island. So it's the farthest south, which I got to, but that little island you can only get to on a small plane, and it went once a day, and it just didn't work in my schedule. Because it was only at the end when I decided, I've been to the farthest north, I've been to the farthest west, I should go to the other two. So I ran down to Okinawa, to the farthest south, and but I couldn't get to the farthest east. So I have to go back. I have to go back. Yeah.
You have another Japanese sort of themed piece, it seems, from the title.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll hear this one and then talk about it a bit. This one's kind of quiet, so turn up your volume at home and mute yourself if you can. And what's it called?
Pikadon. Pikadon means shakukun.
Interesting video again. So enjoy it. Here it goes. Another very cool video.
Yes.
Did you compose that one for flute?
Yeah, that's for flute. Yeah, specifically for flute. And I should say, what's happening in that piece is when the atomic bomb goes off in Hiroshima. And that's what picadone means. It's how they describe the sound and the light of the bomb going off. So what's going on in there is a person experiencing those moments during that destruction, which is behind me again. Yeah. Yeah. So that's what picadone is.
So you've been interested in Japanese culture for a while, not just since your trip.
Yeah, I've been interested since I was a child because I grew up in the Crenshaw district of Los Angeles. And when I was a kid going to elementary school, it was primarily an African-American and Japanese American neighborhood, you know? So those were who my friends were. And, you know, it wasn't like I had a thing for the culture, but you know, you're at school, you're eating lunch, I have a sandwich and they have something else, you know? So I just say, what is that? They tell me, so let me have some. And they let me try it, be into it, you know? So that's how all that started. And my musical associations have worked out that way. I got connected with a now deceased musical genius, Glenn Horiuchi. And I played with him quite a bit, and he introduced me to other musical people of Asian descent. And so like I'm a member of Asian Improv, which is a national organization based mainly in San Francisco and Chicago. And yeah, so I've always been interested in the culture. And through Glenn, Glenn played traditional instruments as well as piano, traditional Japanese instruments. So we did some collaborations together. And basically that's how I got that fellowship, is on the strength of those collaborations. So
who was the poet whose work you were supposed to be?
That's Harumi Makino.
Okay.
Harumi Makino. She was out here. She used to be married to Wadada Leo Smith, who is quite well known these days. And but she went back to Japan. And I had previously set that was also part of this fellowship. Why I had the project. I set one of her poems to music when I was in Bavaria, doing a fellowship in Bavaria. And like I said, I like to deal with where I am. So I had her poem translated into Bayerisch, which is the Bavarian language, because they don't just speak German in Bavaria. They have their own language, you know, and it's a little more than a dialect, you know, it's a little more than a dialect. So I had it transcribed into Bayerisch. So the piece is in Bayerisch, and but the poem is Japanese, and the composer is little Bill Roper from the Crenshaw district of Los Angeles. Yeah, so international.
This is another interesting score. Let's take a peek at it. Okay. Oh, yes.
Yeah, so when you look at the score, you can see the blue and the red. You know, she was using those lights, the blue and the red lights, and that's in the score. And you can see ground zero, that circular grid. And you can see she has notes to play, but she also can interpret everything else that's in there. Yeah, so, and I think another work of genius, you know?
So that one turned out, when you saw it, you were like, yeah, that's what I had in mind.
Yeah, that's, yeah, and you know, a thing about this kind of music of mine, it's not the only music I do. I do music where people don't have any choices, you know, but the music I like to write is where the performer can put their own creative juices into it, you know? I mean, more than just interpreting a line of music, but they can actually, they become a real co-creator. And with these pieces, they really do that. Like I say, all I did was write the music, but I had nothing to do with what's, to me, is really compelling about these videos, you know. That's all them. That's all them. And it makes me quite happy. You know?
As a performer, if someone handed you a score like this, would you find it liberating or intimidating? Or
Oh, it's liberating. It's not intimidating. It's for me, you know, being a classical musician, it's like getting out of jail. You know, I mean, you can do what you want to do within limits. There are limits here. There are a lot of limits here, but there's also, you know, 75% of it, you can do what you want to do. You know, you can interpret that stuff. So yeah, I love getting that kind of stuff. I kind of prefer it, you know, but you know, after playing Hindemith your whole life or Shostakovich, you might prefer this. Not everyone, but you know, it's you know, it's only 12 notes in this Western system. That gets kind of old, you know.
Yeah, the interpretation is really cool, I gotta say, and interesting how they bring in like the lighting effects and the leaves and all the different things.
Yeah, yeah. From one place to the other. That's in the score actually, but not written out. That's those little lines of people moving around, you know. Yeah. So there you go.
We have another piece in this series, but if anyone has any questions or comments, feel free to jump in, and if not, we'll watch another one and then talk a little more. I see some people are commenting that the performances are really cool, which I agree. So then, yeah, let's see the next one. There's another one in this series here. What is this called? Let's see.
Inari-sama Whispers to Katsune.
Ah.
Those are deities. And I'll put one up in the background as this goes on.
Last time I was in Japan, I think I learned that Kitsune is like a fox god of some kind.
Yes, yes.
That's
absolutely.
So far, my only point of reference. But let's see another one by the Southland Ensemble, one of your pieces. That was another very cool performance.
Yeah, it was.
Questions. What were the lines?
Oh, well, you'd have to ask her. You'd have to ask her. I couldn't say. I think she does those. I think that's one of the things that she does.
Oh, okay.
In her practice.
A drawing that maybe it's a map, or maybe it's just her own interpretation.
Yeah, I liked it. I haven't asked her, although I've seen her quite often since then. Yeah.
So
yeah.
Do you play cello, or did you compose it for cello specifically? Or
I composed it for cello. No, I don't play any string instruments, but I like to compose for them. Well, first of all, you compose for people you think might play your music, right? But I like to compose for strings because strings are so versatile. Brass instruments are pretty limited. They can play loud and soft, and you can put a mute in them. That's about it. Brass players will fight with me about this, but it's true.
Well, maybe a trombone can do that sweeping thing.
Yeah, but that's not a timbre. That's just, that's just a slide, right?
That's true. I see your point.
Yeah, but strings have a lot of timbres. Woodwinds too, and they have a few more timbral choices, but nothing compared to strings. And then percussion. So we have percussionists down here, well-known percussionists there. There she goes smiling. They can get a lot of different sounds, but it takes several instruments. They have never let a percussion. If you have a percussionist come to your house, don't have anything loose on the tables, because they'll take it and make an instrument out of it, and you're just stuck, right? But strings can do so many things. They can do so many things. So I like writing for them. Plus, they have a certain sensibility to whatever. Brass players are pretty stodgy. Woodwind players I won't get into, but string players, they're open. Percussionists are open too, but they have so many instruments. You got to pay them to bring their instruments. So
this is all very interesting dirt on the music world I'm learning.
Yeah, I'm going to get into trouble.
I'm just kidding. But someone did ask a question in the chat, and they said, "What did they say? How does your music factor into the historical jazz legacy of LA?"
Yeah, I was afraid I'd get a question like that. Well, it does in the sense that I grew up hearing jazz, listening to jazz, not so much in the home, but when I was raised by extended family, and we'd go to barbershops and stuff, and there'd be jazz playing all the time, and I'd be listening to that and sort of making sense of it, Then coming up, going to school, especially where I went to high school the first 2 years, Locke, they had a jazz program that I participated in. Now, I never viewed myself as a jazz musician, but the aspect of improvisation made a deep impression on me. I improvise, but I don't do jazz improvisation, air quotes, but improvisation has rules that cross the different genres. So I would say that I'm steeped in it. And as far as LA's particular jazz history goes, it's where I'm from. So I've known a lot of those people, even as a youngster. I would play with a lot of those people. A lot of times those people would play in classical orchestras, and I'd play next to them and we'd talk. And they were always, when I was a kid, they were like my age now. They were elders, and they were very, I have to say, they were very friendly and accepting of me and gave me a lot of advice. And a lot of things you learn not directly from music, from the music, but from your association with the musicians, especially as a youngster, So I'd say that's what it was. Like I said, I worked with a lot of people. I worked with Horace Tapscott. I knew people like Red Callender, bass player. A lot of folks, a lot of brass players I played next to. Maurice Spears, bass trombone player, and copyist. Those guys helped me out. they help me out in ways I didn't realize till I got old. You know, sometimes you don't realize shit till you get old. And so now I'm old and I realize shit, you know, so.
Good answer.
Yeah.
That's connected to the historical jazz legacy of LA.
Yeah, Mr. Finkelman, does that work? I know Jason asked that question.
Can I ask you about your, oh, there he, yeah, he liked that answer.
Yeah.
Tell us about your background. Is it related to the song? Or the piece?
To what song?
Oh, I'm sorry, to the piece we just heard. It looks like it's some kitsunes back there.
Oh, the background. I thought you meant my personal background.
Oh, no, sorry.
Yeah, that's the shrine in Kyoto. There's a shrine to Inari. And see, that's him, the fox with the red on there. And everyone knows that shrine, even if they haven't been there. I'll show you the other background and you'll say, oh, yeah, I know that. I know that. It's this place.
I've been there.
Yeah, you see? So that's all to that fox deity who was the loud person in the cello piece. You know, you could see the whispering, and then you see, you know how foxes, they're foxes, you know, dogs. The only dog you can trust is the dog you feed, right? And if it's a fox, you can't even trust it then, right? So, yeah. Yeah, so that's what that background, and that's what this background is. Yeah, I didn't know that's where I was going till I got there. And I said, I've seen this my whole life, and here I am.
Yeah, it's an amazing site.
A lot of walking though, right?
Oh,
a lot of going uphill.
Well, it's part of the experiences. You kind of have to earn it. You have to.
Yeah, you don't have arthritis, so you.
No, you have to hike up there.
Yeah.
We have 2 more pieces, and I hate to skip ahead to my favorite piece, but I'm going to skip ahead to this one that I really like. When Jackie first told me we were going to get William Roper, I looked you up and I saw this thing and I was like, what? And it's him playing something kind of jazzy on a femur. And
oh yeah, that one, yes.
Which I love. So if anyone has to go, don't leave until you see this thing, and then we're going to play. We have another one we can play too. But I really love this one. Well, I love them all.
It's kind of racy.
It's fun. It's short. It swings.
So we're just going to do a little inspirational talk to you about bones, fever, and femurs. Sometimes you have to bring the bone in, play a little bone. Some people say it doesn't matter what kind of bone you have, but I'm the professor of boneology, and I'm here to tell you every bone is not the same. But the difference is not about what you may think it is. Some people think it's all about size. It's not about size, it's about length. You check it out for yourself.
Yeah, Bill. It's a femur.
What she thought about that captain. Smith that Daddy was gonna kill him. But she said, no, Daddy, don't kill him. I love him. I love him because of his bone.
I think when I die, that's what I want to have happen to my skeleton.
Well, it's illegal for humans, you know.
Oh yeah, so tell us about what you're playing there.
Okay. Well, I think that first I should dedicate this to Danny Harold, who I see is on here, because Danny is a regionally famous chef, and that big bone is from a bear and a beef. You know, it's from a cow femur, and I got it when in the early days, in the early 80s, when I was catering for a particular company, and bears and beef were in. So those are femurs. Both those are femurs. The small one, it's an ox femur, but it's called a shoud in Tibet. And the real ones, they prefer that it's a human femur. They prefer that the femur is from a criminal. And it's really best if the criminal was a murderer, right? And so they use that to call spirits and to repel spirits, right? And so the other one is like a cow femur, and I take a lead pipe from a tuba and play it. And it's really my most popular instrument, I'd say, of, you know, when I do those other instruments, that's the most popular one, because you can see you can play anything on it, you know. So, and I should say that performance was totally improvised. All of it was improvised.
Oh, it's delightful. So,
yeah.
So Danny, do you ever have old bones lying around the kitchen and you're like, what can I do with these things? And
yes, you do. You have bones around the kitchen all the time. And no, never once did I think about blowing through it and trying to make a sound out of it. Although I will tell you, it's another name is, it's a baron. Another name is called the steamship round. That's another one. It's called a steamship. It's another one that, and Bill, it would be perfect if Bill who actually can marry the bone and a meal together with the music and the meal. You know, it'd be pretty good. So we'll cook off a steamship round, and then Bill can play the bones.
You set up the event, I'll be there.
I can see that right now.
Good idea. Good idea.
Yeah.
Thanks, Bill.
Yeah.
One of the other things that I read about you a couple months ago when we first organized this was it was like I can't find it anymore online. It was like William Roper's culinary tour of Los Angeles, and it was really fun. And you're like, we're going to start over here, and we're over here.
Yeah. You know, that website, the articles come and go. You know, they come and go. So yeah, and yeah. Well, that whole thing was like, what would you do if someone visited you for a weekend? So for me, it was food. You know, food. Yeah.
And you're a chef also.
I am, although I'd like to be retired, but as Danny knows, you can't retire, you know, because you don't make enough money being a chef to retire. So,
well, maybe
you make just enough to keep you there, to stay for the next meal, to keep you there to stay for the next meal. But Bill is a very good chef. He knows what he's doing, and it's funny because through music, I only know Bill through food, and I'm always enthralled with his musical side. Because I've only known him for 20 years now as a chef, as food, in his food relationship with him. Yeah. So it's a great exposure to see him tonight doing his thing on his level and where he goes in an area I know he loves. And it's just a joy to be listening to his other passions when I know for a fact that he has a similar passions with me when it comes to food.
I'm into pigeonholes or squab holes. Yeah.
That's like all those people who know Picasso from his golf game but don't. Yeah, I mean, what a cool piece. I love it. Thanks everyone for sticking around. I know we're over the hour, but we have one more piece to show you. It's kind of too long to fit it in, the whole thing, but if you want to see a little bit of it, this seems like something you composed recently because it's called COVID-19 Fanfare.
Yeah, Fanfare COVID-19. It was, you know, during the early days of the pandemic.
Oh, and I'm going to stop the recording just because it's going to be such a giant file.
Okay.
Let's let it all run. Maybe it'll be fine. Carry on. I'm sorry. You were saying.
Oh, all right. So a friend of mine, Margaret Kawada, she does mail art. She does a lot of mail art. So she put out a call for pieces to put into a mail art project, a book. And it could be anything. So I did a graphic score for a fanfare for a single instrument, although it could be done by multiple instruments or even a choir. And so that's what I contributed. And then an opportunity came along to do a bigger piece. So I included the fanfare at the end of it. And we won't see a lot of it because it's long. But you'll see the background that I had. I went to Joshua Tree and I went to the Salton Sea, right, to film background. And I have to warn you, when you go to the Salton Sea, if you leave the general areas and start walking around near the water, that's quicksand. And I got stuck in the quicksand. I was there by myself and I got stuck in the quicksand. I was all the way above my waist in quicksand. And it was not pleasant. And what I've learned since is you never go all the way underneath in quicksand. You get to a buoyant part and you stay there. But if you can't get out, it's the elements that kill you, right? Or the seagulls picking out your eyes and shit like that. I was able to get, I pulled myself I did what they used to do in the movies, in the jungle movies, right? You go flat. You sort of try and get as flat as you can. Then you try to, but it took about an hour, took about an hour to get out of there.
Scary.
And yeah, it's not pretty.
I thought you were going to warn people about going to Slab City where all the crazy people are around Salton Sea.
That's a different warning. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I didn't get there.
It's fun, but it's a little wild. So here is COVID-19 fanfare. It's 15 minutes long, but we're just gonna hear about 5 minutes of it. But it's great. Well, I put it on here. Oh, I know. Did I put it up higher? Oh, here it is. All right. I hate to stop it because I was getting really into it, but so that people can talk a little bit and then we'll call it a night. I just wanted to say, very cool. And you had a question. Let's see, somebody in the chat. Oh, Jason said, comment on your use of improvised poetry and storytelling in your performance.
Okay, so there's a long answer and a short answer. So maybe I'll give the middle answer, right? The middle answer is in the 80s, I took a theater workshop in downtown Los Angeles. And so I was working with theater people and movement people. And the director once said, I always wonder what Roper would have to say if he came out from behind the tuba, right? So there was that, right? So then in performing with jazz ensembles and improvising ensembles, I started talking through the tuba. Like on that piece, I was singing and, started talking through the tuba, but it doesn't take long to realize that no one knows what you're saying when you're talking through the tuba. They just know the sound, right? And, when I was young, high school, French teacher gave me the nickname Mumbles, because I talk low all the time. My voice changed early. He gave me the nickname Mumbles, and everyone started calling me Mumbles, and I didn't like that. And another teacher, same high school, ghetto high school, took me aside and said to me, Roper, if people can't understand what you say, they think you have nothing to say and they don't care, right? So same thing with this talking through the tuba thing. So I came out from behind the tuba. And another part of it is, when you're doing solos, it's a lot of notes, it's a lot of thinking. And my solos, in thinking, when I play my solos, when I'm actually playing them, I'm thinking in a narrative way. I'm thinking in a narrative way. Now, in certain ways, and musicians will understand this, I got tired of playing tuba a long time ago, but I still play it because it's what I do. And there are times when I enjoy it. So for solos, it just became, I kind of may have something to say actually verbally. So maybe I'll just say that, and leaders let me do it. And sometimes audiences like it, but new leaders, people are new to it, they don't always understand that it really is a inspiration thing. There's no guarantee. So I had a leader come up to me and say, next piece, we're going to have you do one of your spoken solos. And I said to her, well, no, I may not have anything to say. So it's not up to you to tell me to do this. You can tell me not to do it, but you can't tell me to do it. You can give me permission to do it. And if I feel something, I'll do it. And of course, the problem is, words, music is abstract. Notes are abstract, but words are not abstract. Words mean something. So it's really risky to talk, that way, because you may start out, and like everything, I may have a good idea when I start out, but it may be a sentence that's the good idea. But then you're left with having to fill the shit up, and making something. So it doesn't always work, but you have to make it work. It's just like playing a solo. You can be in the middle of a solo, and not only does the audience not know what you're doing, but you don't know what you're doing. But you got to get back there, right? You got to finish the solo up where it makes sense. So it's the same thing with the words. So that's what that's about, So it's good to, but usually a lot of my stuff is political, and you can always get pissed off at political shit, particularly in the last age, in the last age of orangeness. You see, there's a lot of orange behind me in this background, but it's not my hair. In the last age, it was orange hair messing with us all the time. You'd always find something to say about that shit, you know? So there you are. That's my answer. It's, you know, it's, so that was maybe the long version.
Oh, it was good. Good answer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you plan the hand movements, or was that in the spur of the moment?
It's in the score. So I kind of did like, I think Cassia did, you know, it's in the score. I could either play that or I could, you know, so those movements, they're the shape of the music, you know. So, yeah, I just decided to, you know, use the hand. Because I'm tired of playing the tuba, although that wasn't the tuba. I'm just tired of playing the damn tuba, but I still like it, you know.
Did you write the part where you sank into quicksand into the score, or was that just kind of a?
No. Actually, the score was already written. You know, the score had been written. The quicksand, that's going to be another piece. That's going to be another piece.
What is the aerophone? It looks like an antique instrument.
Oh, well, aerophones are just they're wood instruments. They're wind instruments. So they cover all the wind instruments. Wood instruments you blow into, or even in the short video at the beginning where I'm playing that Thai mouth harp, that's an aerophone too.
Oh, okay.
You know, so yeah, the score says for single aerophone, so any wind instrument can play it.
I thought
But
that
in reality, any instrument can play it. And
so what was the name of that instrument you were playing?
that's a chimbasso.
Oh, right.
That's a valve bass trombone or contrabass trombone, and it has a long sordid history as well. And in Los Angeles, it's very cynical. You know?
So are there any new instruments that you're excited about these days, that you're tired of the tuba?
Well, you know, I made a couple last week, as you know, and I made a with a water buffalo horn, Asian water buffalo horn. It was a failure for what I had planned it to be, which was to blow into it as a horn. But to save it, I made it into like a bassoon. I bought a bassoon vocal with a double reed, and it goes into the buffalo horn, and it sounds pretty good. Sounds like a funky bassoon. And then I made a couple instruments out of coyote femur and a pronghorn antelope, which is not really an antelope, but it's not a deer either, but they call it an antelope because we live in America and we call shit what we want, right? So I made instruments out of those. Also double reeds. I use double reeds for them because they're too short for anything else. So oboe reed for the pronghorn, and then a Suona reed for the coyote and turkey wings, you know, because those bones are hollow. So yeah, I made 4 or 5 instruments this week. Yeah, and got paid for playing them yesterday. So
That's
there
great.
we go. Yeah, there we
Do
go.
you never feel like picking up the theremin or the conga drums or anything like that?
Well, you know, drums hurt your hand.
Right.
Right. that hurts your hand. No, theremin I'd kind of like to mess with, you know, but it's more equipment, you know, it's more equipment. It's not just theremin. You have to have an amplifier and you have to have electricity and shit, like simple. I say go
That's true.
simple.
Yeah, that is nice that you can kind of take it with you and not have to plug in and
Yeah.
turn on the amp and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, William. I don't know how much longer before Zoom kicks us off, so we'll call it a night. And thanks to everybody for staying.
Yeah, thanks for coming, you all.
Yeah, that was fun. Love getting to know
Cool.
you, and
Yeah.
so many good
Hope I
videos.
know.
And someday when COVID goes down to a manageable level, we will hopefully have you in person.
Yeah. Well, if I'm still alive by then, you know,
I'm sure you will be.
that could be another 20 years.
Yeah. Well, you know, who knows? But thanks, everybody. It's great to see everybody. And you're on our mailing list. Next time we do one, we'll email you. And thanks, Bill.
Live long and prosper. Don't take any wooden nickels. Don't eat any yellow snow.
Good tips. All right. Stop recording.